Hello guys and welcome to my video on goods and services tax, GST, which I'm fairly sure all of you guys already know about. But can you calculate it? Can you add it on? And more importantly, if I told you a price of something had GST on it, could you work out what the price was before GST? It's actually not as simple as it sounds. I mean, it is once I teach you. My name's Dan from Maths Guru. Really good to see you. Thanks very much for watching. Subscribe on YouTube if you can. Just lets me know you're watching, and so find me on TikTok and all those other social media places. But enough of that rubbish. Here's my learning objectives. If you need to, have a look over it. But pretty much we want to know what GST is, be able to calculate it, fun things with GST and without GST. Now, in the past two lessons, we've looked at a load of stuff on percentages, and that's really important throughout this course, right? Why? Because percentages are everywhere. Later on, when we get to recursion and finance, we're going to be using percentage multipliers left, right, and center, right? So being able to work with percentages, convert them into decimals is hugely, hugely important. And we're sort of going to ease you into it here in this particular video, right? But what do they say? There's only two things which are certain in life, and that's sadly death and taxes. Yep, inevitably, sadly, we are all going to shuffle off this mortal coil, and we're always going to end up paying some sort of a tax. The government love taxing us because that's what we use to pay for all sorts of interesting things, like, I don't know, schools. And you're going to turn around and say, yeah, we could shut all the schools. No, we couldn't. I'd be out of a job. Now, how does the government collect taxes? Well, there are so many taxes I could list, but I'm not going to. I pay tax on my salary every single month. That goes to the government. The property, I just bought a house, paid, what did I pay? Stamp duty, that's a tax. Every time I put fuel in my car, most of that I think is actually tax. And in fact, most of the things you buy, because it has GST added on. Right, so the government sets some sort of standard tax rate for all the items you buy, or most of the items you buy, and then the retailers have to add it on, or they have to charge you this because they get charged by the government. Now, at the moment, in the UK, it's 17.5%. That's huge. In Australia, it's about 10%. And in fact, we'll go for this video, it's 10%. And in Singapore, where I've just come back from, it's as low as 7%. I want to know how the government there make money. Now, finding how much GST should be added to a product. Now, as we've said before, we know from the work we have in for percentages, if I know that GST is 10%, then I want to basically do 10% of whatever it is I'm adding onto. So if I've got, I don't know, if I've bought an e-scooter for $300, good luck with that one, yes, or I've just bought it from the manufacturer and I'm about to sell it and I want to add on 10%, then I'd have to find 10% of 300, which, how do we do that? Well, we know that 10% is 10 on 100, of is times, and then 300. But this here can be cancelled down, can't it? Because we can basically divide the top and bottom by 10. So that would become 1 on 10 times 300. Well, that 300 is fixed at the moment. I've called it sort of, that's my e-scooter that I am going to be selling on to people for $300. But what about if it's $700 or $5,000 or $2.50? Well, this value here is going to change, but this 1 on 10 isn't. So to be able to work out the actual value of the GST that's going to be added on, what I do is I do 1 on 10 times whatever value I'm trying to add on my GST to, right? So that's one way of doing it. All that will give me is the value of the GST. So 10% of 300 is $30. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sell my e-scooter for 30 bucks, right? What I'm saying is that I've got to add an additional $30 onto my $300. So I've got to add that additional 30 onto there so that I would be selling my bike or my e-scooter for $330. So if you've got a summary book, this is the important stuff. Put down that GST for Australia. You basically do 1 divided by 10 times whatever you're trying to add GST onto. And well, we've got an example. Right, now, I'm really lucky. Thanks very much, Cambridge, for allowing me to use your examples. You guys rock. So it says, if the cost of electricity in 1 quarter, I mean, if you don't understand, electricity is billed every quarter in Australia. So every 3 months, we get a bill, is $288.50. How much GST will be added? So this is obviously inferring the cost before GST. So what do? Well, I do 1 on 10 times whatever it is I'm adding GST onto, $288.50. Now I know that 1/10 of something is dividing by 10. I can move my decimal point 1 place to the left. That's one way of doing it. If you want to do it quickly, dividing by 10 is really easy. Move your decimal point 1 places, which will give me $28 Now, is that the answer to my question? Is that the answer to my question? Well, I want to go back. Does it want the new price, or does it want to know just the GST? If the cost of electricity in 1 quarter is $288.50, how much GST will be added? There we go. So $28.85. Now, obviously, I could use my calculator here. Now, I know lots of you out there use the ClassPad. Pretty much the functionality for this will be exactly the same. So I do have a ClassPad, and I will show ClassPad users how to do stuff if it's markedly different, but at the moment, hopefully you'll just help me out here. So what I'm going to do is do a fraction, I do 1 on 10, and I'm going to times that by $28.85. And oh, try that one again. All right, so I'm going to copy that down. Let's do that, $288.50, he says, and there we go, we get our $28.85. Yay! Oh, another example. For the bill for the services that a plumber provides is $650. GST needs to be added. What is the amount of the final bill with GST? Now again, the wording in General Maths is what tends to trip people up. I don't want to know what the GST was, I want to know the final bill. Okay, but I've got to work out what the GST is. So I now know that the GST is going to be 1/10 of what it is I'm adding on to, so $650 here. Again, I'm going to do this in my head. I know that I can divide by 10 just by moving the decimal point one place to, he's trying to do it for the camera, to the left, yes, and that's going to give me $65. And again, because it now wants the final bill, I'm going to say, therefore, my final bill would be equal to 650 plus the 65, which gives me 715. And don't forget your unit, $715. Again, just going to use my calculator to check. So what am I going to do? 1 on 10. So 1 on 10, enter. Let's times that by, what was it, 650. It entered, there's my 65, added on to 650, it gives me 715. Now again, for those of you who are going, is there another way of doing this? Absolutely. I know that when I add 10% onto something, I can actually work out a new percentage. And what by that I'm saying is, the $650, let's assume that is 100%. Let's say that's my start amount. Well, I'm adding on 10%. I'm just going to turn my calculator off there. I'm just going to add 10% on. So that must mean that my new figure will be 110% of what I started with. So 110% of what I started with, which is 650. Well, I know that 110% is 110 divided by 100 of is times 650. Let's fire up my calculator again. I know that's covering it over, but let's see, 110 divided by 100. I'm going to times that by 650, and lo and behold, out comes $715. So there are obviously two ways of being able to do this. Either way, doesn't matter. I tend to actually prefer to do it this way because I know I'm not going to make a mistake. Work out the GST, add it on. Now, this is where life gets tricky, and this is where your summary book comes in handy. Find the cost before GST was added, just like mathematics to want to do things forwards and backwards, right? Now what we're going to do is they're actually going to give you a price with the GST. And it wants to say, well, how much was it before we added GST on? Now, a lot of people get confused here because they say, well, I'll just work out 10% and then take it away. It doesn't actually work that way, sadly. There is a formula. And the formula is the cost without GST is equal to the cost with GST, and you divide that by 1.1. Hold on a moment, 1.1. Well, if you remember it, a moment ago we said 110% of some price is equal to, well, 110% is 110 divided by 100, which when I put that into my calculator, actually gives me 1.1. So 1.1 times my pre-GST gives me my value with GST. So that's why we actually divide by 1.1. Now, if you're not sure what that was all about, don't worry about it. If you do, awesome. The main point here is the cost without GST is equal to the cost with GST divided by 1.1. All right, and again, The new price with GST is equal to the old price times 1.1. So this here is just another way of thinking about it. The new price with GST is take your old price and multiply it by 1.1, which is effectively what I was doing here. Yes? So that actually there, if I was to write it out, would give me 1.1. So 1.1 times 650. Well, where did I get the 650 from? It was my original price. Yes, indeed. All right, so let me see. Find the cost before GST was added. Here's an example. An electric guitar cost $2,299. Who'd pay that? That's including GST. What is the price without GST? Okay, so we now know that the price would be equal to the price with GST, which is 2299, divided by 1.1. Well, I can't do that in my head, so let's bring up my class pad or my TI Inspired. 299 divided by 1.1, hit enter, and it gives me $2,090. $2,090. See how easy that was? Nice and easy. Use the formula, but make sure you pick up what's done in the question. All right, and again, what I'm saying there is it says here, including GST. All right, so it's giving you the cost including, and it wants it before GST. All right. Finding how much GST was actually added. Oh, well, in which case, let's go back to this example here. That was my price before GST. And the price including GST was that one there. That was including GST. So how much GST was added? Well, wouldn't I just do 2299 minus 2090? Wouldn't I do the price including GST minus the price before GST? Ah, yes, and that's pretty much what I'm saying here. Now, if you're following the Cambridge textbook, they actually have two more formulas, and I'm like, okay, I get that. There are ways of doing it, and if you want to, put that in your summary book and do it. I tend to think to myself is, why would I learn lots and lots of formulas when I can just learn one way of doing it? And if I can find the price before GST, and I know the price with GST, I just take them away, all right? And that's what I've put here. So, a desktop computer sells for $935, including GST. What was the amount of GST that's been added? Right, so I know the price before is going to be the price with GST, which is $935, divided by 1.1. Again, fire up my calculator, 935 divided by 1.1 gives me $850. So that was what it was before I had the GST. So therefore, my GST must be 935 minus 850. So again, 935 minus 850 gives me $85. And again, there are obviously ways of doing that using this. I don't want to think about more and more formulas. I want to be able to find things the way that I've just done them. And there we go. That is the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you can, head over to mathsguru.com. The screen is shown behind me where you can sign up, log in. It's all free, all right? In fact, it's free to sign up. When you're in there, there's downloadable notes. So you can find this video and download the notes that I've just written all over and find the whole course on there as well. If you can subscribe, please do so. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in another video. Take care. Bye.